So we need to break the ice. So let's have a conversation.
Hi, I'm Kitten McCreary, and I am in Los Angeles, California.
Okay. What would you like to have a conversation about?
And I'm Pete Navis in Osaka, Japan.
And this week on The Naked Critics, we are going to be discussing the Universal Pictures 2015 release, Ex Machina. So this is a movie that, for the first time in our series so far, we're going into with absolutely no preparation whatsoever. We really had no knowledge of this movie before sitting down to watch it.
I was basically bored. I think this movie is fine. I feel like this movie is a solid 20 to 30 years behind my own journey through the world of exploring ideas in science fiction. Had I read this story in a copy of Analog when I was subscribing to it in high school, I would have been like, oh, that's a cool story. But yeah, I've run into a few other people who are like, oh, it made me think so much and things just blew me away. But for me, there were no surprises in this movie. There were no revelations. There were no oh, that's so amazing. So yeah, I am mostly indifferent and somewhat offended by this movie.
Much like you, I don't think the story was anything cutting edge. It wasn't anything spectacular. In fact, I found it to just sort of be a tech thriller version of Frankenstein. But from that, it is a movie that I had an appreciation for because I feel like the performances in this movie were wonderful. Even though I wasn't that compelled by the story itself, I was compelled by the characters. I wanted to keep watching these actors do what they did. And I appreciated having a sci-fi / techno thriller film that wasn't all explosions and glitz and glam. It was very simple. It was very pared down. And even though it was telling a common and predictable story, I liked the fact that it took the time to just tell the story.
I'm glad that none of the characters were presented as simply this is a good person, this is a bad person. The sort of summary that came to my mind was a sort of mashup between the sort of Genesis Eve. Okay, can we please stop naming our female androids who are verging on humanity Eve or Evelyn or Eva or Ava or please can you just hit me in the head with a hammer that has metaphor written on the side of it before I see the movie, but name your character something else.
Right.
But it was a mashup between that sort of Garden of Eden, temptation and knowledge and escaping from the restrictions with the Bluebeard, oh, this guy collects wives in his basement and someone uncovers his secret and then, they have to kill him to escape, sort of. They're just told with a sort of a veneer of techno jargon.
Right. I did find the movie to be visually pleasing. That contrast between the world outside and all of its beautiful, lush colored versus the interior of the house, which wasn't boring. They didn't confine it to just grays and two-tones. There was still color in it, but it was still muted and subtle. Inside, everything was flat edges and very...
It was precise.
Basic.
The weird little, fantasy sequences, I was like, why are these here? We don't need this as an audience. Just let the characters have the conversation. Show us the character thinking about the conversation. We can fill in his thoughts. Because we're human beings, and we're having the same thought process that he is. It was like everybody did really, really good work in service of a movie that I just didn't care about.
The thing that I really love about this movie are the characters, or the actors. It establishes this kind of awkwardness from the very beginning of the movie, from that very first interaction between Nathan and Caleb. where Nathan is very obviously this alpha, powerful, character, and he's trying to force this level of comfort.
And you're freaked out by me to be meeting me, having this conversation in this room at this moment, right? And I get that. I get the moment you're having, but... Dude, can we just get past that? Can we just be two guys? Nathan and Caleb? Not the whole employer-employee thing?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's like, no, let's just get past this, okay? Let's just be cool. As soon as somebody says, no, let's just act like this isn't an awkward moment. Well, of course you're gonna act like it's an awkward moment. And they never lost that.
It's an employer-employee relationship. And it's one where the boss is clearly manipulating things all the time, but will not permit the employee to acknowledge it.
I sort of feel like that's what a lot of basic human interactions are like, where things are just horribly, horribly awkward, and one person's just like, nah, man, don't be awkward.
Right. That's usually the person who has all of the power in the situation.
You get to see that moment later between Eva and Caleb. Well, you get to ask me lots of questions and learn about me, but I never get to ask you anything.
That's not a foundation on which friendships are based.
Because she is outside of the sort of human socialized power structures, she gets to behave in the way that the average person never does. Mm-hmm.
And I liked that parallel between power struggle between boss and employee and power struggle between human and AI. And I also liked seeing the complete lack of control that Nathan had when it came to Kyoko. Like, he's so completely incapable of having interactions that he had to design her not to be able to.
Right. And sort of came to believe that meant that she had no perceptions.
He's as completely lost and inept in these interactions as Caleb is, only Caleb is introduced to us as being awkward and inept.
Because Nathan is in such a power position, he has the ability to surround himself with things that he can control.
Yes, you get to see Caleb go through that process of, developing seemingly real feelings for a not real thing. You get to see Ava go through her processes of being doe-eyed, insecure, to kind of a master manipulator who's responsible for the death of 2 people. And you get to see Kyoko go through that process of being muted automaton to
at least making a single choice within the limits of her ability to make choices.
And we get to see Nathan go through that process of being huge controlling alpha dog who then just completely loses control of everyone and everything. And in the end of the movie is where I really start to have problems. It's almost like they had to rush towards this muddled but predictable end. I loved the scene where Ava then goes in and skins the other AI to create a skin for herself, because I felt like that was kind of metaphorically brutal. So yeah, I do have to say though, of all of it, my favorite sequence is the disco scene. Nathan's batshit crazy, but you realize he had to take the time in creating Kyoko to be like, no, I don't want her to be able to talk. I don't really want to communicate or interact, but I want to be able to disco with her.
Yes. And like, they have that routine down. They are in sync.
They are. I want that. I want that disco moment. I want to live in a color-corrected universe with disco moments.
So I do have to confess, I spent like half of the movie being like, why do I recognize this actor? He seems like a Weasley. Because he was. This is Bill Weasley in this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, most people are just rude enough that they'd have those moments where they'll just pull up their phones and IMDb it, even if they're in the middle of a movie theater.
But like in this case, I imagine like somebody doing that and being like, he was Bill Weasley, and everyone else is like, oh.
Oh!
Here's my big issue with this movie is that this is one of the most misogynistic and most subtly misogynistic movies that I have seen in ages. It has this pretension of being this like, oh, she's growing into being a real person and she finds herself and then she's powerful and she can overcome her obstacles. Bullshit. This is a movie where the women who are good women are the ones who are mute props or get hung up in the closet when you're done with them, who get dismantled when something is wrong so they can be made into a better version of themselves. The woman who comes the closest to being a full person is really, really dangerous. She should not be taught. She should not be trusted. You should not fall in love with her because she will kill you. And that's like beyond the message of like, oh, these are cool things to think about with AI, is that message of an intelligent woman that you trust will hurt you.
I don't feel like the misogyny in this was subtle at all. I feel like we were beaten over the head with it. And I wonder if that's what the writer and director Alex Garland intended. I don't know, I'd like to say it starts off subtle, but it doesn't. It starts off where you have two men being like, no, we're gonna sort of confab and see if between the two of us we decide that this is a woman.
Right.
And when you're introduced to her, before they put clothes on or anything, all you have is her pretty face and the outline of breasts.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you're given for her. Everything else is this, like, cutaway part. Because all of those other parts, when it comes to women, are irrelevant. As long as they got a pretty face and some nice tits, they're good to go. It wasn't based on whether or not she could communicate in ways that were human. It was based on whether or not she could develop a crush. Whether or not she could fall in love,
right.
Whether or not she could manipulate a guy into believing that she had feelings. And that was what was going to define her as sentient.
That's what real women do.
I do think you see a lot of that in sci-fi as well as thrillers and techno-thrillers. And this is a movie that I feel lends more towards the side of techno-thriller than it does sci-fi, because it didn't really explore the science of AI. We didn't talk about that at all, really. It touched on it, but...
It's sci-fi in the sense that a lot of sci-fi is like, if such a technology existed, how would it affect us, as humans, as a society, in the way that we interact with each other?
Right. But I feel like that was a minuscule part of this story.
I feel like that's the only part of this story. Is the idea being that, like, if you were able to create this artificial intelligence, what would that mean for your definition of a person, for your definition of, like, what a relationship is?
I feel like it's more of a story about relationships between men and women, and specifically power-hungry, insecure men, and how they view and treat women.
And really, the movie is about powerful guy, less powerful guy, 16-year-old girl. Like, it's about that sort of, like, woman discovers her sexuality and learns how to use it to get what she wants. Like, that's the movie. Like, she literally makes herself into a sexual being at the end of the movie. Like, she straps on her breasts, and then we spend, like, 5 minutes looking at her in, like, 4 different mirrors from all these angles, because we need to see that she is totally naked.
And of course we had all of those moments with Kyoko as well.
Mm-hmm.
And several of the bodies in the closet. It's like, no, let's take time to watch. No, absolutely all of them are naked.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll take the objectifying of women to a very literal point.
The filmmakers may get that that's what this movie is about, but I don't know that the people going to see it necessarily are thinking on that level. Maybe I'm just really pompous about my evaluation of the way a lot of people watch movies.
I was really hoping that they were going to reveal that Caleb was an AI.
I was actually hoping that Nathan was the AI. That would have been interesting to me. Like,
right.
Or, yeah, of course, my first thought was that Caleb was the AI. And the test was, is he aware of his own nature? And I liked that they went to the place where he himself began to think that.
Right.
And tested it in the only way that he had available, which was... I wouldn't recommend this movie to people. I don't think I would. Do you want to say anything before we dive into, like, sort of summary stuff?
I think this is a movie that I'm like, no, if it's on, watch it.
Yeah, it is nice to have a movie about robots and artificial intelligence that does not turn into a... Well, no, I was going to say it doesn't turn into a, oh my god, the robots are going to kill us all movie, but it sort of does that, but it at least doesn't turn into an action movie.
You have the exact same concepts explored in Blade Runner.
Mm-hmm.
As you do in Ex Machina, only Blade Runner is very action, forceful sci-fi.
Right, it's a cop show about robots that wish they were human. Okay, here's how we rate this movie. We're never going to be able to use any clips from this movie for our video because they've all got boobs in them. Here you go. How many dead robot wives in closets do you give this movie?
Robot wives?
They're robot wives. You know they're robot wives.
Okay.
You know he had sex with every single one of them.
Sex does not make you a wife.
He built his own wives because real women talk back.
Case in point.
How many dead robot concubines in closets do you give this movie?
I give this movie 2.25 dead robot concubines in a closet.
I'll give it 1.5 dead robot concubines in closets. What does that put us at? That puts us at 1 7/8 dead robot concubines hanging in closets for Ex Machina. I think that's how you say it. You can say Ex Machina, but it's Latin, so it's not, it's alright. It's alright, it's cool. It's cool. Latin Student of the Year, runner-up Christian High School, 1993. I'm living in the past. I like it.
That's alright. You study Latin and the rest of us will be doing things like, I don't know, having sex.
Whatever. I'll build a mute robot to have sex with. I'm in Japan. Where do you think that stuff originates?
I think you could probably just find one there without having to build it.
There's actually a sex robot vending machine outside. There's a little sign that says, like, you can't buy these if you're under 18, but nobody actually, yeah.
Yeah, monitors that.
This took a weird turn right at the end. Like,
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for this installment of The Naked Critics. And join us next time when we talk about something else.
Thank you for being with us. Next episode, I will be joined by my mute Asian counterpart, so I can just say everything I want to about the movie without interruption. Have a good day.
Bye.
Everybody's